In the void between galaxies, something ancient stirs, a geometric nightmare of metal and intent drifting through the endless dark. Inside, millions of voices speak as one, a whisper that consumes worlds, that transforms life itself into machinery, into perfection. Then, a tear. Reality fractures, hyperspace screams. The cube emerges into a galaxy far, far away, a galaxy rich with something the collective has never encountered. An energy that flows through all living things, an energy that connects, that binds, that transcends mere biology. The Borg Collective does not understand the Force, but soon it will. And when the hive mind touches the power that created the very fabric of this galaxy, when cold perfection meets ancient mystery, the question will no longer be whether resistance is futile. The question will be whether anything, Force, Jedi, Sith, the galaxy itself, can survive what comes next. This is Galaxy of Titans. The unknown regions had always been a place of whispers and madness. Ancient hyperspace routes twisted back on themselves. Stars flickered in patterns that defied astrophysics. And in the deepest dark, where no Republic charts dared venture, reality tore open. The subspace fracture appeared without warning, a wound in the fabric of space itself, bleeding green radiation and transwarp energy into a universe that had never known such forces. Through it emerged a shape that violated every principle of galactic engineering. A perfect cube, 3 kilometers on each side. Its surface, a labyrinth of conduits and alcoves pulsing with sickly emerald light. The Borg cube hung in the void, silent and absolute. Inside, the collective stirred. Millions of drones moved in perfect synchronization, their thoughts no longer their own. Their voices merged into a single consciousness that spanned the entire vessel. They had been pursuing a Federation starship through a transwarp conduit when the anomaly struck. A collision of technologies that should never have met. Transwarp and hyperspace. 2 universes briefly touching. Now they were elsewhere. We are the Borg. Existence as you know it is over. We will add your biological and technological distinctiveness to our own. Resistance is futile. The message transmitted on all frequencies, in all languages the collective had ever assimilated. But here, in this new galaxy, there was no response. Only the distant hum of stars and the peculiar background radiation that seemed almost alive. On Coruscant, in the Jedi Temple's highest meditation chamber, Master Yoda's eyes snapped open. Around the galaxy, Force sensitives gasped as if struck. Padawans dropped their training sabers. Sith acolytes screamed in their hidden temples. Something had entered the Force, or rather, something had entered the galaxy that the Force could not touch. A void, a blindness, an absence so profound it created its own terrible presence. Feel it, do you? Yoda whispered to the empty chamber. His ears drooped. In 900 years, he had never sensed anything like this. It was as if a section of the galaxy had simply been excised from the living Force, replaced with something cold and geometric and utterly horrifically wrong. The Borg cube began to move, its transwarp coils recalibrating for this new form of faster-than-light travel. The collective analyzed the hyperspace signatures permeating the region. Crude compared to transwarp, but functional. Adaptable. Within moments, the cube's navigational systems had integrated the principles of hyperdrive technology from ambient radiation patterns alone. A new directive pulsed through the hive mind. Survey. Analyze. Adapt. Assimilate. The collective had found a new hunting ground. A galaxy teeming with biological life, with technology, with distinctiveness waiting to be added to perfection. The drones moved through the cube's corridors, purposeful and patient. They had assimilated thousands of species across their own galaxy. This one would be no different. But as the cube's sensors swept the nearby systems, detecting vast civilizations and technologies the collective had never encountered, something else registered. A faint energy signature present in nearly all life forms, inconsistent, immeasurable by standard sensors. The collective's analytical subroutines flagged it as irrelevant, biological radiation perhaps, or sensor error. The Borg did not understand the Force. Not yet. In the depths of the cube, in Unimatrix 01, the Borg Queen's chamber pulsed with activity. She stood motionless on her platform, her pale face serene, her mechanical components grafted seamlessly into her flesh. Her voice echoed through the collective's shared consciousness. A new galaxy, new distinctiveness, new perfection awaits. We are the Borg. We will adapt. We will assimilate. We will achieve perfection. 10,000 drones responded in unison. We are Borg. The cube altered course, moving toward the nearest inhabited system. Its sensors had detected a small vessel, primitive, faster-than-light capability, minimal defenses, biological crew complement of 217, an ideal initial target for assimilation. On Coruscant, Yoda rose slowly, leaning heavily on his Geimer stick. The feeling had not faded. If anything, it grew stronger. He needed to convene the council immediately. Whatever had entered their galaxy, it carried a wrongness that made even ancient Sith artifacts feel clean by comparison. Troubled times ahead, I sense, he murmured, a darkness unlike any other, a perfection that knows no balance. The Force rippled with warning, but in the unknown regions, the Borg cube continued its approach, utterly deaf to the cosmic energy that permeated this galaxy. The collective felt nothing but purpose, nothing but the inexorable drive toward assimilation. The first contact was 7 hours away. The luminous Pathfinder was a consular-class Republic cruiser designed for exploration rather than combat. Captain Rel Vantis had spent 20 years charting the unknown region's edges, mapping safe hyperspace routes through the chaos. His crew of 217 souls, humans, Twi'leks, Duros, even a young Jedi Padawan named Kira Ven, trusted him to keep them safe in the galaxy's most dangerous frontier. He could not save them. Captain, we're detecting a massive object dead ahead, the sensor officer called out, his Duros head tails twitching with confusion. It's not in any database, not separatist, not imperial, not even ancient tech. Sir, it's a perfect cube, 3 kilometers per side. Vantis leaned forward in his command chair. On screen. The view screen flickered to life, and every being on the bridge fell silent. The Borg cube filled their vision, a nightmare of industrial perfection, its surface crawling with energy patterns, its intent utterly unknowable. Hail them, Vantis ordered. Standard Republic greeting protocols. The communications officer worked her console. Channel open, sir. Transmitting on all frequencies. Unknown vessel. This is Captain Rel Vantis of the Galactic Republic exploration ship Luminous Pathfinder. We come in peace and request identification. Please respond. For a moment, nothing. Then the bridge lights flickered. Every console sparked simultaneously, and a voice, cold, mechanical, speaking in perfect galactic basic, filled the cruiser. We are the Borg. You will be assimilated. Resistance is futile. In the ship's meditation chamber, Padawan Kira Ven jerked out of her forced trance, gasping. The wrongness she'd felt for hours had suddenly crystallized into pure existential terror. She reached out through the Force toward the cube and felt nothing. A void where a ship with thousands of life forms should register as a brilliant constellation of living energy. Instead, emptiness. A hunger that consumed everything it touched. Captain, they're locking on with some kind of tractor beam, the tactical officer shouted. Deflector shields. Shields are holding, but they're adapting. The beam is rotating through different frequencies. Vantis gripped his armrests. Evasive maneuvers. Get us out of here. The Pathfinder banked hard, its sublight engines flaring. But the Borg cube didn't pursue conventionally. It simply vanished and reappeared directly in their path, having somehow bent space itself to intercept them. Impossible, the helmsman breathed. A green cutting beam lanced out from the cube, slicing through the cruiser's shields as if they were vapor. The bridge exploded in sparks and screams. Hull breaches on decks 4 through 7, life support failing in sections C and D. "Return fire," Vantis roared. "All turbo lasers." The Pathfinder's weapons blazed, brilliant bolts of green energy slamming into the cube's surface. For 3 glorious seconds, Vantis thought they might actually damage it. Then a shimmering field appeared around the cube, and the turbo laser bolts simply dissipated against it, harmless as rain. "Your weapons are ineffective. Your defensive capabilities are unable to withstand us. Prepare to be boarded." Kira burst onto the bridge, her lightsaber already ignited, its blue blade humming. "Captain, we have to abandon ship. That thing, it's not alive, but it's not quite dead either. The Force can't touch it." Before Vantis could respond, the hull shrieked. Metal tore like flesh. A tubular appendage, organic and mechanical, pulsing with green light, punched through the bridge's port bulkhead. It extended serpentine, impossible, and latched onto the Pathfinder's hull with a wet, metallic crunch. "Boarding parties detected on all decks," the tactical officer screamed. "They're cutting through. They're everywhere." Through the ship's internal cameras, Vantis watched in horror as pale humanoid figures materialized in his corridors. They moved with inhuman precision, each step synchronized. Cybernetic implants covered half their bodies. Their skin was gray, lifeless, and their eyes held no emotion, no fear, no mercy, only purpose. The crew opened fire with blaster rifles. The Borg walked through the barrage, shields shimmering around them. One bolt struck a drone in the chest. It staggered but continued advancing. The second bolt was absorbed completely. By the third shot, the drone's shields had adapted. The blaster fire deflected harmlessly away. "Weapons are useless," a security officer shouted into his comlink. "They're adapting to..." His scream cut off. Through the camera feed, Vantis watched as tubular appendages shot from the drone's arms, piercing the officer's neck. Nanoprobes flooded his bloodstream. His scream became a gurgle, then silence. His eyes went dead. When he stood again, cybernetic implants were already sprouting from his flesh. "We are Borg. You will be assimilated." Kira ignited her lightsaber and charged down the corridor. Her blade sang through the first drone she encountered, bisecting it cleanly. The Borg collapsed, but 3 more advanced to take its place. She spun, her Jedi training making her a blur of motion. The Force guided her blade through one drone's optical implant, another's neck. But for every one she destroyed, 5 more materialized, and they were learning. The 4th drone she attacked raised its arm. A small force field appeared, catching her lightsaber blade. The energy crackled, held for a moment, then failed. But it had been enough to slow her, enough to adapt. The next drone's force field held longer. The one after that deflected her strike entirely. "No," Kira whispered. "No, no, no." A tubular appendage shot toward her throat. She twisted, barely evading it. The Force screamed warnings in her mind, danger from all directions, death converging with mechanical inevitability. She reached out, trying to push the drones back with the Force itself. Nothing happened. They weren't alive enough for the Force to touch, weren't dead enough to be ignored. They existed in a horrifying space between, and the Force simply slid off them like water off Durasteel. On the bridge, Captain Vantis made his final decision. "Abandon ship. All hands to escape pods. Transmit everything we've recorded to Coruscant. They need to know." The drone appeared behind him without warning. He turned, reaching for his blaster, but it was too late. The appendages pierced his neck. Ice flooded his veins. His last thought before the Collective consumed his mind was of his daughter on Coruscant. Then he was gone, and in his place stood Borg Drone 7 of 12, primary adjunct of Unimatrix 01. Throughout the Pathfinder, the assimilation continued. Crew members became drones. Technology was analyzed, cataloged, integrated. The ship's databanks, containing star charts, Republic protocols, information on thousands of inhabited worlds, flowed into the Collective's vast storage. And in the ship's database, buried in routine sensor logs, the Borg found references to something called the Force, a mystical energy field, immeasurable, present in certain individuals called Jedi and Sith. The Collective flagged it as superstition, biological rationalization of natural phenomena, irrelevant to the perfection of assimilation. But as Padawan Kira Ven's escape pod jettisoned from the dying cruiser, the only pod to successfully launch, the Collective noted an anomaly. One life form had evaded capture despite overwhelming tactical disadvantage. Analysis suggested enhanced reflexes, precognitive capabilities far beyond biological norms. The data was stored, prioritized. The Collective did not dismiss what it could not yet explain. It simply added it to the list of distinctiveness to be acquired. The distress beacon reached Coruscant 16 hours after the Pathfinder's destruction. Padawan Kira Ven's escape pod had barely made it to the nearest Republic outpost before its life support failed. She was unconscious for 3 days, her mind fractured by what she'd witnessed, her connection to the Force tangled with traumatic echoes. When she finally woke, in the Jedi Temple's medical wing, 5 masters stood around her bed. "Describe them," Master Mace Windu commanded, his tone sharp but not unkind. "These beings. You said they weren't touched by the Force." Kira's hands trembled as she spoke. "They were empty, Master, like holes in the Force itself. I tried to push them, to sense their intentions, but there was nothing. They converted people, turned them into things, machines wearing flesh, and they adapted. My lightsaber worked at first, but with each drone I destroyed, the next one became harder to kill." Master Plo Koon's masked face tilted thoughtfully. "An enemy that learns from each encounter. Troubling." "More than troubling," Yoda said quietly from the foot of the bed. "A threat unlike any we have faced, this is. Felt their arrival, I did. A wound in the Force. A wrongness that grows." Mace crossed his arms. "The Council has decided. We're sending a strike team to investigate the coordinates where the Pathfinder was destroyed. We need to understand what we're facing before this threat reaches populated space." "I'm going with you," Kira said, trying to sit up. Pain lanced through her ribs, broken when she'd crashed her escape pod. "You need healing." "I'm the only one who's faced them and survived." Her voice cracked. "I watched 216 people stop being people. I can help." Mace studied her for a long moment, then nodded. "You'll stay aboard the ship. If we need your insight, we'll call on it. But you're in no condition to fight." 3 days later, the Venator-class Star Destroyer Resolute dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the unknown regions, accompanied by 2 smaller frigates. On the bridge, Jedi Master Sacy Teen reviewed the tactical displays, while Jedi Knight Ayla Secura coordinated with the clone commanders. "Sensors are picking up debris field ahead," the clone officer reported. "Matches the Pathfinder's signature. And sir, we're detecting a large object, cube-shaped, 3 kilometers per side." The Borg cube hung motionless amid the wreckage, its surface pulsing with that same sickly green luminescence. Around it drifted the shattered remains of the Republic cruiser, picked clean of useful technology. "Battle stations," Teen ordered. "Launch all starfighters. Prepare boarding parties. Master Secura, you'll lead the infiltration team. I'll command the naval engagement." Ayla ignited her lightsaber, its blue blade casting shadows across her leku. Around her, 20 Jedi Knights and a full company of clone troopers prepared for insertion. "May the Force be with us." The Resolute launched its ARC-170 fighters first, sleek Republic interceptors that screamed toward the cube in tight formation. Their proton torpedoes armed, their pilots ready. The Borg cube did not react, did not move. simply hung there, waiting. "All fighters, engage at will," the squadron leader commanded. The fighters opened fire. Dozens of proton torpedoes streaked toward the cube's surface, followed by sustained laser cannon barrages. For a moment, one beautiful, hopeful moment, the Republic forces thought they might have surprise on their side. Then the cube's shields activated. Every torpedo, every laser bolt was absorbed into the shimmering green force field. Not deflected, absorbed. "What the?" Switch to ion cannons. All ships ion cannons. The ARC-170s recalibrated. Blue ion blasts replaced red lasers. The first volley actually penetrated the shields, scorching the cube's hull. Alarm klaxons rang through the collective. Damage detected. New weapon type encountered. The Borg adapted in 47 seconds. The second ion barrage was absorbed as easily as the first. The fighters scattered as green cutting beams lanced out from the cube's surface, concentrated energy that sliced through starfighter shields like they were nothing. 3 fighters exploded instantly. 4 more spun out of control, their systems failing, their pilots screaming. "All fighters, fall back," T'Een ordered. "Prepare for..." The cube vanished. One moment it was there, the next, gone. Sensors screamed warnings. The massive structure had somehow jumped through space, reappearing directly alongside the Resolute. Its bulk filled the view screen, close enough that individual Borg drones were visible through the alcoves lining its hull. "Evasive maneuvers," Tien shouted, but it was too late. The tractor beam seized the Star Destroyer with impossible force. Tubular boarding appendages shot out, punching through the Resolute's armor plating. The ship shuddered. Lights flickered, and through the internal sensors, they watched Borg drones materialize in the lower decks. "Boarding parties, deploy now," Ayla commanded. "We're taking the fight to them." The LAT gunships launched from the Resolute's hangar, arcing through space toward the cube's surface. Republic commandos and Jedi Knights locked inside, their weapons ready, their resolve absolute. They found an opening, a damaged section from the earlier ion cannon strike, and burned their way through. Ayla was first through the breach, her lightsaber illuminating the nightmare within. The Borg cube's interior was a labyrinth of corridors and alcoves, lit by pulsing green conduits. Drones stood in alcove berths, motionless, regenerating. Others moved through the passages with mechanical precision, oblivious to the intruders. The air hummed with power and the whisper of a million voices speaking as one. "Spread out," Ayla whispered. "Find their command center. Disable whatever's controlling them." Her team advanced, lightsabers ignited, blasters ready. The force rippled with warning, but it was muted here, distant, as if the cube's very structure dampened that cosmic energy. A Borg drone rounded a corner. A clone trooper fired instantly. His blaster bolt struck the drone's chest, burning through artificial flesh. The Borg stumbled, but kept advancing. "Target the head," another trooper shouted. "Concentrated fire." They obeyed. 12 blaster bolts converged on the drone's skull. It finally collapsed, sparking and twitching, but behind it came 20 more. The drones advanced in a wall of cybernetic horror, their shields shimmering to life. The first volley was absorbed. The second. By the third, the clones' blasters were completely useless, their energy dissipating harmlessly against adapted defenses. "Lightsabers," Ayla called. The Jedi surged forward, their blades singing. Ayla's lightsaber cleaved through the first drone's torso. It fell, bisected. A Zabrak Knight beside her decapitated 2 more with a spinning strike. For a moment, the ancient weapon proved superior to blaster technology. The Borg Collective analyzed, cataloged, adapted. By the time Ayla engaged her 6th drone, it had raised a small force field emitter. Her lightsaber struck the field and held, crackling the blade unable to penetrate. She pushed harder, channeling the force into her strike, and the field failed, her blade punching through. But it had slowed her. Given the collective data, the next drone's force field was stronger. The one after that deflected her strike entirely. the lightsaber blade sliding off at an angle. Around her, other Jedi were experiencing the same phenomenon. What had been an effective weapon minutes ago was rapidly becoming obsolete. "Fall back," Ayla ordered. "Regroup at..." A tubular appendage shot from a drone's arm, piercing the shoulder of the Zabrak knight beside her. He screamed as nanoprobes flooded his system. Ayla severed the appendage with her lightsaber, but it was too late. The knight collapsed, convulsing. Cybernetic implants began sprouting from his flesh with horrifying speed. "No!" Ayla reached for him through the Force, trying to purge the infection, to heal. The newly assimilated drone opened its eyes. They were dead, empty. And when it spoke, its voice merged with millions of others. "We are Borg. Your distinctiveness will be added to our own." It raised its arm. The lightsaber it had carried, the Zabrak's weapon, ignited in its cybernetic grip. The Collective had assimilated a Jedi, and with that assimilation came knowledge, muscle memory, techniques. The blade work was crude, mechanical, but effective. Ayla parried desperately, her heart shattering. She was fighting what had been a fellow knight, a friend, a living being, now just a puppet of the hive mind. "Retreat!" she screamed. "Everyone back to the gunships." The Jedi fought their way back through the cube's corridors, leaving behind 3 assimilated knights and a dozen clones. Ayla was the last through the breach, sealing it behind her with a thermal detonator that barely slowed the pursuing drones. The gunships screamed back toward the Resolute, which was now listing badly, half its systems offline. The Borg had reached the bridge. Captain Rex, commanding the clone forces, made the only choice left. "All ships, jump to hyperspace, now!" The remaining frigates complied instantly. The Resolute, its hyperdrive still barely functional, lurched into hyperspace a moment before the Borg could fully assimilate it. The jump was blind, uncoordinated. They'd emerge somewhere random in Republic space, but they'd emerge alive. As the Republic fleet vanished, the Borg cube remained, pulsing in the darkness. Inside its central chamber, the Queen's eyes flickered with new understanding. The Collective had acquired 3 Jedi. Their memories, their knowledge, and buried in those memories, encoded in neural patterns the Collective was only beginning to comprehend, was something extraordinary. A force that connected all living things. An energy field that certain biological entities could manipulate. The Collective had dismissed it as superstition. But now, analyzing the assimilated Jedi's cerebral cortex, the Borg detected residual energy patterns, microscopic organisms in their blood, midi-chlorians, that seemed to interface with this so-called force. The Queen's voice resonated through the hive mind. New biological distinctiveness detected. These Jedi possess capabilities beyond standard parameters. Analysis required. Directive: locate and assimilate more force-sensitive organisms. Determine if this force can be integrated into the Collective. 10,000 drones responded, "We are Borg." The cube set a new course. The assimilated Jedi's memories contained coordinates, thousands of inhabited worlds, and one planet in particular, dense with force-sensitive beings, a world called Coruscant. In the medical bay of the limping Resolute, Ayla Secura stood over a containment field, staring at what had once been Jedi Knight Zan Calrissian. The Zabrak's body lay motionless on the examination table, cybernetic, implants protruding from his skull, neck, and chest. His skin had taken on the characteristic gray pallor of the Borg. His eyes, when they occasionally flickered open, held no recognition, no soul. "Can we save him?" she asked the medical droid, though she already knew the answer. "The nanoprobes have completely rewritten his cellular structure," the droid reported. "His autonomic functions are controlled by cybernetic implants linked to an external collective consciousness. Without that connection, his brain cannot sustain life independently." "I'm sorry, Master Jedi. The being you knew is gone." Ayla's hand drifted to her lightsaber hilt, then stopped. Even now, looking at the abomination before her, she couldn't bring herself to deliver the mercy stroke. He wasn't dead, but he wasn't alive either. He existed in a horrifying limbo. Master Secura, the clone medic approached hesitantly. We've detected unusual readings from the subject. His midi-chlorian count is fluctuating. It's as if something is trying to access the Force through his body but can't quite connect. Ayla leaned closer. Through the Force, she should sense Zan's presence. Diminished, perhaps, but there. Instead, she felt that same terrible void, that absence. Yet beneath it, buried deep, something struggled. A flicker. A trapped consciousness screaming silently. "Is he aware?" she whispered. "Is Zan still in there?" Before the droid could answer, Zan's eyes snapped open. His body convulsed against the restraints. And when he spoke, his voice was layered, his own vocal cords producing sounds, but merged with a chorus of whispers. "We are Borg. We are Zan Calrissian of the Jedi Order. We are 7 of 12. We are..." The voice fractured, became individual for just a moment. "Ayla, help me. I'm still... They're in my head. Millions of voices. Can't think... Can't..." Then the collective voice reasserted itself. "Irrelevant. Individuality is irrelevant. We are Borg, but we sense something. An energy. The Force. We feel it now. Through this drone's biological distinctiveness, it connects. It flows. Zan's body arched off the table. Force energy crackled around him. Not controlled, not purposeful, but raw and chaotic. The containment field sparked. Medical equipment throughout the bay went haywire. Ayla stumbled back as an invisible pressure wave exploded outward. "Sedate him," she shouted. "Maximum dose." The medical droid complied, pumping powerful sedatives into Zan's bloodstream. Slowly, the convulsions ceased. The Force disturbance faded. But something fundamental had changed. The Borg Collective, through one assimilated Jedi, had touched the Force for the first time. And it had felt it touch back. Across the galaxy, in the unknown regions, the Borg Queen stood motionless in her central chamber. Data flooded the hive mind, neural patterns from the 3 assimilated Jedi, analyzed and cross-referenced against thousands of species in the Collective's database. These midi-chlorians were unique, symbiotic organisms that created a feedback loop with a universal energy field. The Borg had assimilated telepaths before, empaths, species with precognitive abilities. But this was different. This wasn't merely biological capability. This was a fundamental connection to the fabric of reality itself. "The Force," the Queen murmured, her synthetic voice thoughtful. "A source of biological enhancement, measurable through midi-chlorian concentration, present throughout this galaxy's population, variable potency." The Collective's analysis continued. In the memories of the assimilated Jedi were techniques: telekinesis, precognition, enhanced reflexes, mental influence, energy manipulation, all achievable through this Force. And if these abilities could be isolated, understood, replicated through cybernetic enhancement. "New directive," the Queen announced. "Priority acquisition, Force-sensitive organisms. Secondary directive, locate midi-chlorian-rich species for mass assimilation. The Force will be added to our perfection." But there was a problem. The Borg drones, with their cybernetic implants and hive mind consciousness, existed in that void space, where the Force couldn't fully reach. The assimilated Jedi could touch it, barely, but couldn't wield it effectively. Their midi-chlorians were being suppressed by the Borg technology, their individual connection to the Force drowned in the collective consciousness. The Queen considered this obstacle for precisely 4.7 seconds. Then she formulated a solution. Implement protocol, selective assimilation, retain higher midi-chlorian concentration in designated Force-wielding drones, reduce standard cybernetic implantation by 37%, maintain individual consciousness at minimal threshold to preserve Force connection. It was unprecedented. The Borg had always eliminated individuality completely. But if some degree of individual consciousness was required to access this force, then the collective would adapt. Perfection required evolution. On Coruscant, in the Jedi Temple's council chamber, the emergency session had been ongoing for 6 hours. Master Yoda sat with his eyes closed, his expression grave. Around the circular chamber, holograms of Jedi masters across the galaxy flickered, some reporting similar disappearances of Republic vessels, others describing the void feeling that now haunted the unknown regions. 3 nights lost, Mace Windu said, his voice heavy. Assimilated, turned into weapons against us, and Master Sakura reports that one of them briefly accessed the Force while under the control of this collective. Impossible, Master Ki-Adi-Mundi protested. The Force flows through living beings. These drones are abominations, neither fully alive nor dead. Yet it happened, Ayla's hologram insisted. I felt it. Zan touched the Force for a moment before the sedatives took effect. The Borg are learning. They're adapting to the Force itself. Yoda's eyes opened. Warned you, I did. A threat unlike any other. Technology that consumes life. Purpose without balance. And now, the Force itself, they seek to pervert. What do we do? Master Plo Koon asked. How do we fight an enemy that adapts to every weapon we use, that can turn our own people against us? We find their weakness, Mace said firmly. Every technology has a vulnerability. Every system can be disrupted. We need to understand how they function, what controls them, and how to sever their connection. And if we cannot, Obi-Wan Kenobi's hologram spoke from the outer rim. If they continue to spread, continue to assimilate, Master Yoda, you sense their arrival. Can you sense their intent? Yoda was silent for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice carried a weight that chilled every master present. Intent, they have none. Purpose, only. Hunger that cannot be satisfied. Will, without choice. Assimilate everything they seek. Life, death, technology, the Force itself, all made into one terrible unity. If stopped, they are not. The end of individuality, it will be. The end of the Jedi, the end of all we know. The council chamber fell silent. Outside, Coruscant's sun set over the city planet's endless spires, painting the sky in shades of orange and red. It looked almost like fire, almost like a warning. In the unknown regions, the Borg cube finished its calculations. The assimilated Jedi's memories provided clear coordinates to the core worlds, to Coruscant, to the Jedi Temple itself, a structure housing thousands of Force-sensitive beings, rich with midi-chlorians, perfect for assimilation. The cube's trans-warp coils, now adapted to hyperspace technology, activated. Space bent. Reality folded. The Borg were coming, and they were no longer interested in mere technology. They wanted something far more valuable, something that had existed in this galaxy since the dawn of time, flowing through all living things, connecting and binding the very fabric of existence. The Borg wanted the Force itself, and what the Borg wanted, the Borg assimilated. The Queen's voice echoed through the hive mind one final time before the jump. We are the Borg. We will add the Force to our perfection. Resistance is futile. Balance is irrelevant. Individuality is obsolete. The galaxy will be assimilated. 10,000 voices responded in perfect unison. We are Borg. The cube vanished into hyperspace, leaving only wreckage and silence behind. In 3 days, it would reach the core. In 3 days, the war for the soul of the galaxy would begin. And the Jedi, for all their power and wisdom, had no idea how to fight an enemy that learned from defeat, that adapted to every strategy, that could turn their own greatest warriors into weapons of perfect mechanical horror. On the industrial world of Mustafar, deep within a fortress of black stone and flowing lava, Darth Sidious stood before a holographic display. His yellow eyes studied the fragmented reports flooding in from the unknown regions, Republic ships disappearing, Jedi teams failing to return, garbled transmissions speaking of assimilation and resistance being futile. And beneath his hood, the Dark Lord of the Sith smiled. "Fascinating," he murmured, his voice a rasp of controlled pleasure. "Lord Tyrannus, what do you make of these Borg?" Count Dooku's hologram materialized beside him, the elegant Sith's expression thoughtful. "An extragalactic threat, Master, cybernetic in nature, operating through a hive mind. They appear to be utterly without fear, without hesitation. And according to our spies within the Republic, they've assimilated Jedi Knights and briefly accessed the Force through them." "Yes," Sidious breathed. "The Force. They seek to understand it, to consume it, to add it to their perfection." He turned away from the display, his hands clasped behind his back. "The Jedi are terrified. The Republic is in disarray, and these Borg continue to adapt, to evolve, to spread. They are a threat to your plans, Master. If they reach the core worlds, they are an opportunity," Sidious corrected, his voice sharp. "The galaxy has grown complacent. The Jedi believe themselves invincible. The Republic thinks itself eternal. But now comes something that cannot be negotiated with, cannot be reasoned with, cannot be stopped by their pitiful democracy and ancient philosophies." He turned back to Dooku, and his smile widened. "Fear, Lord Tyrannus. True, existential fear. The kind that makes populations beg for a strong hand to protect them." Dooku's eyes narrowed. "You intend to use the Borg to justify your empire. I intend to allow the Borg to demonstrate the Republic's weakness. Let them assimilate a few worlds. Let them turn Jedi into drones. Let the people see that their precious counsel cannot save them." Sidious began to pace, his dark robes swirling. "And when fear reaches its crescendo, when the Senate is paralyzed and the Jedi are broken, I will offer salvation. Emergency powers, a unified military command, an empire strong enough to face this threat. And the Borg themselves, Master, they will not simply stop once you've consolidated power." Sidious's laughter was cold and brittle. "Of course not. Which is why we will study them, learn from them, perhaps even—" He paused, savoring the thought. "Perhaps even control them." "Control a hive mind? Master, the Borg have assimilated thousands of species across their own galaxy. What makes you believe? Because they are machines, Lord Tyrannus. Sophisticated, yes. Adaptive, certainly. But ultimately, they are technology. And all technology can be manipulated by those with sufficient understanding." Sidious activated. Another holographic display, this one showing ancient Sith texts. Holocrons glowing with dark side energy. The ancient Sith created abominations through the Force. Leviathans, Sith spawn, creatures that bent to the will of their masters. If the Borg seek to assimilate the Force, then perhaps the Force can be used to dominate them. Dooku was silent for a long moment. "You're suggesting we intentionally allow Sith to be assimilated, to infiltrate the collective from within. Not just any Sith, acolytes, expendable ones. Those strong enough in the Force to maintain some connection even after assimilation, yet loyal enough that their final thoughts will be of serving the dark side." Sidious's eyes gleamed. "If the Borg are a hive mind, then infecting that mind with the dark side's corruption could prove enlightening. The risk is acceptable," Sidious snapped. "I did not scheme for decades to see my empire threatened by extragalactic cyborgs. If they cannot be controlled, they will be destroyed. But first, they will serve their purpose. They will break the Jedi. They will terrify the Republic. And they will clear the path for a new order." Dooku bowed his head. "What are your orders, Master?" "Send our spies into the unknown regions. I want full tactical analysis of the Borg cube, its capabilities, its weaknesses, its patterns. Then locate a Force-sensitive acolyte. Someone expendable but powerful. Someone whose assimilation will give us eyes and ears within the collective itself. and if the dark side cannot control them. Sidious turned back to the lava flows of Mustafar, his face illuminated by the hellish glow. Then we will do what the Jedi cannot. We will unleash every weapon, every dark side ritual, every forbidden technique necessary to eradicate them. The Sith have survived for millennia by doing what the weak will not. When we adapt, we endure, we conquer. He raised one hand, and Force lightning crackled between his fingers. Raw, terrible power that could annihilate flesh and break minds. Let the Borg come. Let them assimilate. Let them believe themselves invincible. And when they have served their purpose, when my empire stands supreme and the Jedi lie broken, the lightning intensified, filling the chamber with its malevolent glow. I will show them that there are some forces in this galaxy that cannot be assimilated, some powers that even perfection cannot comprehend. The dark side, Dooku murmured. The dark side, Sidious confirmed, infinite, eternal, and utterly ruthless. 3 days later, on the edges of the unknown regions, a small Sith infiltration vessel approached the Borg cube. Aboard it was a single passenger, Darth Silas, a Zabrak acolyte with considerable force potential but limited training. He had been told this was a test of his worthiness, a mission to infiltrate and sabotage the enemy. He did not know he was bait. I sense them, Silas said, his hand resting on his lightsaber. The void in the Force. It's like staring into the abyss. He turned to the pilot droid. Get me close enough to board, then jump away. I'll complete the mission and signal for extraction. The droid did not respond. It had been programmed by Dooku himself. There would be no extraction. As the vessel drew within range, the Borg cube's tractor beam seized it with inexorable force. Silas ignited his crimson lightsaber, channeling the dark side, feeling its power surge through him. He would show these machines the strength of the Sith. The hull tore open. Borg drones materialized in the corridor, their shields already adapted to lightsaber frequencies from previous encounters. Silas attacked with ferocious intensity, his blade carving through 2 drones before the rest adjusted. Within seconds, his weapon was useless against their force field defenses. He reached out through the Force, unleashing a blast of telekinetic power that sent 3 drones flying. But for every one he destroyed, 5 more advanced. Tubular appendages shot toward him. He dodged the first, deflected the second with the Force. The third caught his shoulder. Pain, ice flooding his veins, nanoprobes rewriting his cells. His scream echoed through the cube's corridors, a sound of pure agony and rage. We are Borg. You will be assimilated. Your biological and technological distinctiveness will be added to our own. Silas fought. He channeled the dark side with desperate fury, trying to burn the infection from his body with Force lightning. For a moment, one glorious moment, the nanoprobes hesitated. The dark side energy was anathema to their programming, chaotic and destructive, where they sought order and perfection. But the collective adapted. Always they adapted. The nanoprobes recalibrated, learning to route around the Force lightning, to convert its energy into power for the assimilation process. Cybernetic implants sprouted from Silas's skull, his thoughts fragmented, merged with millions of others. His individuality began to dissolve, but something unexpected happened. As Silas's consciousness joined the collective, so too did his connection to the dark side. The Borg had assimilated Force-sensitive beings before, the 3 Jedi from the Resolute. But those Jedi had been trained in balance, in suppressing emotion, in maintaining serenity even in death. Silas was Sith. His power came from passion, from rage, from the raw, unfiltered dark side of the Force. And as he became Borg, that darkness flooded into the hive mind like poison into water. In the central chamber, the Borg Queen staggered. Around her, drones momentarily froze, their collective consciousness overwhelmed by something it had never experienced. Pure, concentrated hatred, anger, fear, aggression. What is this? The Queen's voice glitched, uncertain for the first time in her existence. Analysis. This force energy is destructive, chaotic. It does not seek perfection. It seeks domination. Through the hive mind, Silas's consciousness screamed, not in pain, but in triumph. He was being assimilated, yes, but he was also infecting the collective. His dark side presence spread through the neural network, touching every drone, every subroutine, every piece of the vast mechanical consciousness. And in his final moment of individuality, before the collective fully absorbed him, Darth Silas sent one thought, one memory, back through the Force to his master on Mustafar. It works. The dark side corrupts them. But Master, they're learning to use it. On Mustafar, Darth Sidious felt that final transmission. His smile faded. He had expected the Borg to be vulnerable to Force corruption. He had not expected them to weaponize it. Interesting, he whispered to the empty chamber. Most interesting indeed. In the unknown regions, the Borg cube continued its journey toward Coruscant. But now, among its thousands of drones, 4 were different. 4 Force wielders, 3 former Jedi, 1 former Sith, stood in their alcoves, regenerating, learning, and deep within the collective's vast intelligence, new protocols formed, new understandings. The Force was not merely an energy to be studied. It was a weapon to be mastered, a tool to achieve the ultimate perfection. The Borg Queen's voice echoed through the hive mind, stronger now, certain. We are Borg. We are one with the Force. We will assimilate the light. We will assimilate the dark. All will become perfection. All will become Borg. The cube accelerated. Coruscant lay ahead, the heart of the Republic, the home of the Jedi Temple, a world with trillions of beings, thousands of Force sensitives, and technology spanning millennia, the perfect target for assimilation. And now, armed with the beginnings of Force understanding, the Borg were more dangerous than ever before. The galaxy's nightmare had only just begun. The first warning came not from Republic sensors, but from the Force itself. Across Coruscant, every Jedi, from the youngest youngling to the eldest master, gasped simultaneously as reality twisted. It was as if the Force itself recoiled, screaming a warning that transcended words or understanding. In the temple's meditation gardens, Padawans collapsed. In the council chamber, Masters Yoda and Windu stood abruptly, their faces ashen. "They're here," Yoda whispered. 3 Borg cubes materialized in Coruscant's orbit, emerging from hyperspace in perfect synchronization. Each was 3 kilometers of geometric nightmare, pulsing with malevolent green light. Around them, Republic defense stations immediately opened fire. Turbo laser batteries, ion cannons, proton torpedoes, everything in their considerable arsenal. The Borg shields absorbed it all. Within seconds, the cube's adaptive defenses had cataloged every weapon frequency, every energy signature, every tactical approach. Green cutting beams lanced out in response, slicing through defense stations like a vibroblade through flesh. Explosions blossomed across Coruscant's orbital perimeter. Debris rained down toward the city planet's upper atmosphere. On the Senate floor, Chancellor Palpatine stood before the assembled delegates, his face a mask of grave concern. "Senators, we face an unprecedented threat. I am invoking emergency powers. All Republic forces are hereby placed under direct military command. Coruscant's defense is now our highest priority." The Senate erupted in chaos, some delegates shouting approval, others protesting the consolidation of power. But Palpatine's words were drowned out by the sound of atmospheric entry. Through the chamber's transparasteel dome, 3 shapes descended through Coruscant's sky, trailing fire and fury. The Borg cubes were coming down. Their shields flared as they punched through the upper atmosphere, ignoring the Republic starfighters that swarmed around them like insects. The cube's tractor beams seized entire buildings, lifting them from their foundations before discarding them as obstacles. One cube positioned itself directly above the Senate district. Another hovered over the industrial sector. The third, the largest, descended toward the Jedi Temple. In the temple's central courtyard, Mace Windu ignited his purple lightsaber. Around him, 200 Jedi Knights formed a defensive perimeter, every available warrior who wasn't already engaged across the galaxy. Clone troopers reinforced their positions, heavy weapons armed, faces set with grim determination. "They want the temple," Ayla Secura said, her twin Leku trembling. "They want us, our knowledge, our connection to the Force." "Then they shall face the full might of the Jedi Order," Ki Adimundi declared, his lightsaber blazing. The cube's underside opened. A massive boarding tube extended downward, punching through the temple's ancient shields as if they were paper. The structure shook, stone cracked, and from the tube's opening they came. Hundreds of Borg drones descended on repulsor platforms, their shields shimmering, their cybernetic implants gleaming in Coruscant's artificial light. But these were not the mindless drones the Jedi had faced before. These moved with purpose, with coordination that transcended mere programming, and at their head marched 4 figures that made every Jedi's blood run cold. 3 wore the tattered remains of Jedi robes, their bodies corrupted by Borg technology but still recognizable. Zan Calrissian, Master Jarl, Knight Sienna Vass, their lightsabers ignited, blue and green blades held in cybernetic hands. The 4th was Darth Silas. His crimson blade burned with dark side energy, and around him, the air itself seemed to writhe with corruption. "By the Force," Mace breathed, "they're using our own against us." The assimilated Force users moved in perfect unison. Their strikes coordinated through the hive mind. They attacked not as individuals, but as a single organism with 4 bodies. Mace met Zan's blade, their lightsabers clashing in a shower of sparks. The Borg Jedi fought with mechanical precision, his every move calculated by the Collective's vast intelligence. But there was something else, something worse. As they fought, Mace felt it through the Force, a wrongness that went beyond mere absence. The assimilated Jedi were touching the dark side, not intentionally, not with passion or purpose, but simply because Silas's corruption had spread through the Collective's shared consciousness. Light side and dark side blended together in the hive mind, creating something unnatural and profane. "Don't let them touch you," Mace shouted. "One strike and you're infected." Around the courtyard, Jedi engaged the Borg drones with desperate fury. Obi-Wan Kenobi's blade carved through 3 drones before they adapted, his mastery of Soresu allowing him to deflect the tubular assimilation appendages. Kit Fisto's smile had vanished, replaced by grim concentration as he fought alongside his former Padawan. Luminara Unduli moved like water, her green blade never stopping, never hesitating. But for every drone they destroyed, 5 more descended from the cube. The Jedi were being overwhelmed by sheer numbers. In the temple's lower levels, Yoda led the evacuation of younglings and Padawans. The ancient master's lightsaber was a green blur, cutting down any Borg that penetrated the upper defenses. His connection to the Force was absolute. He could sense the drones coming before they appeared, could feel the corruption spreading through the temple like a cancer. "Quickly, younglings must leave," he commanded, "to the underground passages, to safety." A young Togruta girl, barely 8 years old, looked up at him with tear-filled eyes. "Master Yoda, what about you? Stay, I must. Fight, I must. But remember you will. Remember that the Jedi stood against the darkness. Remember that we did not surrender." He placed a gentle hand on her head. "The Force will be with you, always." The children fled into the tunnels as Yoda turned to face the approaching horror. 20 Borg drones, led by the assimilated Sith, emerged from the corridor. Silas's voice, layered with thousands of others, filled the space. "We are Borg. We are Silas. We are the dark side. You will be assimilated, Master Yoda. Your wisdom will be added to our perfection. Yoda's ears flattened. Dark side, you embrace. But understand it, you do not. Perfection through domination. This is not the way of the Force. Balance, there must be. Individuality, there must be. Without these, nothing you are but machines that scream in the darkness. Individuality is irrelevant. Balance is obsolete. We are perfection. Then face perfection's end you shall. Yoda launched himself forward, his small form becoming a green comet of pure Force energy. His lightsaber struck Silas's blade with enough force to crack the floor beneath them. The assimilated Sith staggered, and for just a moment, one precious moment, the collective's control wavered. Deep within Silas's corrupted mind, a fragment of the man he'd been screamed. The dark side that had once been his willing servant now imprisoned him. He wanted to die, wanted oblivion, wanted anything but this existence as a puppet of the hive mind. Yoda sensed it, sensed the trapped consciousness, the suffering. His face twisted with sorrow. Release you, I cannot, but end your pain, I can. His lightsaber found the gap in Silas's cybernetic defenses, a clean strike through the primary cortical node. The assimilated Sith collapsed, his connection to the collective severed. In his final second of existence, Darth Silas felt something he'd never experienced in life: peace. But his death had given the collective valuable data, the organic brain's vulnerabilities, the specific neural pathways that controlled Force manipulation, the exact point where individual consciousness could be preserved within the hive mind. The remaining drones adapted their implants accordingly. On Coruscant's surface, across 3 major districts, chaos reigned. Civilians fled through the streets as Borg drones descended from the cubes, their assimilation appendages converting everyone they touched. A Twi'lek mother screamed as nanoprobes flooded her daughter's body. A human senator tried to negotiate. "We can discuss terms. Surely we can reach an understanding," before being silenced mid-sentence, his pleas transformed into the monotone voice of the collective. Republic clone troopers fought valiantly, but their blasters were useless after the first few shots. Some resorted to physical combat, using vibroblades and thermal detonators to destroy drones at close range. It worked, briefly. Then the Borg adapted, their shields extending to deflect kinetic weapons as well. In the Senate chamber, Chancellor Palpatine watched the carnage through the viewport, his expression carefully neutral. Beside him, clone commanders awaited orders. "Chancellor, we need to evacuate you," one insisted. "The Borg are 3 sectors away and advancing." "No," Palpatine said softly. "I will not abandon Coruscant. I will not flee while our people suffer." He turned to face them, and his voice carried absolute authority. "Activate the planetary defense grid. Every weapon we have. Concentrate fire on the cube above the temple. If we can destroy one, perhaps the others will withdraw." The commanders saluted and rushed to comply. Across Coruscant, massive turbo-laser emplacements rose from concealed positions, weapons meant to repel planetary invasion. Weapons that had never been fired in millennia of peace. They all targeted the single cube hovering above the Jedi temple. The coordinated barrage was magnificent. Hundreds of massive energy beams converged on the cube simultaneously, overwhelming even its adaptive shields. For a glorious moment, the Borg vessel's surface cracked, exposing interior corridors to atmosphere. Drones were vaporized by the dozens. Systems failed. The cube began to list. In the temple courtyard, Jedi looked up in hope. "It's working." Then the other 2 cubes responded. Green cutting beams lanced out from orbit, targeting every turbolaser emplacement on the planet. The weapons that had taken centuries to build were destroyed in seconds. Entire city blocks vanished in nuclear fire. Millions died in the first volley. Billions more would follow. And the damaged cube, rather than withdrawing, simply began to regenerate. Nanoprobes reconstructed damaged sections. New drones were manufactured from assimilated materials. Within 10 minutes, the vessel was whole again, its shield stronger, its weapons recalibrated. Mace Windu, fighting desperately in the temple's ruins, finally understood the terrible truth. They couldn't win. Not here. Not like this. The Borg learned from every attack, adapted to every strategy. The more the Republic fought, the stronger the Collective became. "Retreat!" he shouted through his comlink. "All Jedi, fall back. We need to regroup. Find another way." "Master Windu, we cannot abandon the temple," Ki-Adi-Mundi protested. "The temple is stone and metal. The Jedi are what matter. Fall back, now." Reluctantly, the surviving Jedi began their withdrawal, fighting a desperate rearguard action. Obi-Wan covered Ayla as she pulled a wounded Padawan to safety. Kit Fisto held a choke point alone, his blade singing, buying precious seconds for others to escape. In the lower levels, Yoda sensed the retreat order. He looked at the advancing drones, at the assimilated Jedi now marching through the temple's sacred halls, and his heart broke. 900 years he had protected this place. 900 years of teaching, of wisdom, of hope. Now it would fall. "Forgive us, Force," he whispered. "Strong enough, we were not." He turned and fled, his small form disappearing into the escape tunnels, leaving behind the temple that had been his home for longer than most species' entire lifespans. Above Coruscant, the Borg cubes continued their systematic assimilation. Entire sectors went dark as millions were converted. The planet's gleaming spires, symbols of Republic power and prosperity, became tombs of cybernetic horror. And from the ruins of the Jedi Temple, a new signal emerged. The Borg had accessed the temple's archives. Every holocron, every record, every piece of knowledge the Jedi had accumulated over 25,000 years. The Collective now knew the locations of every Jedi temple, every Force-sensitive bloodline, every secret of the Order. The hunt could begin in earnest. The planet Mandalore had survived countless wars. Its people, forged in conflict, tempered by loss, had learned that survival meant adaptation, that honor meant never surrendering, and that sometimes the only way to win was to refuse to lose. When news of Coruscant's fall reached Mandalore, the clans convened. In the ancient war room of Sundari, clan leaders gathered around a holographic display showing the horror unfolding across the core worlds. 3 planets fully assimilated, 17 more under siege. The Republic fleet scattered, the Jedi broken, and the Borg advancing with mechanical inevitability. Bo-Katan Kryze stood at the table's head, her armor gleaming crimson and silver. Beside her, Death Watch commandos and traditional Mandalorian warriors, old enemies united by something worse than their ancient feuds, watched the carnage in grim silence. "They're unstoppable," a Clan Ren representative said, his voice hollow. "Coruscant fell in 6 hours. 6 hours. The Republic capital, protected by thousands of Jedi, defended by the largest fleet in the galaxy. How do we fight something like that?" "We fight the way Mandalorians always have," Bo-Katan replied, her voice hard as Beskar. "We adapt. We improvise. We endure." She zoomed in on a tactical display. "The Borg learn from every encounter. Every weapon we use once becomes useless the second time, so we don't give them the chance to adapt." "Explain," Pre Vizsla demanded. The Death Watch leader's interest peaked, despite their political differences. "Hit and run, never the same tactic twice, never engage long enough for them to analyze our methods." Bo-Katan pulled up schematics of a Borg cube. "We've studied the recovered data from Republic encounters. The Borg need time to adapt. Seconds, yes, but still time. If we strike fast enough, hard enough, and withdraw before they can counter, we can hurt them." "Hurt them isn't enough," a clan elder growled. "We need to kill them. Then we find their weakness. Every technology has one." Bo-Katan highlighted a section of the cube's interior. "These central nodes, they coordinate the hive mind, destroy enough of them, and their adaptation becomes slower, less efficient. They become vulnerable." Vizsla leaned forward, studying the schematic. You're talking about infiltration, boarding their vessels, fighting them on their own ground. I'm talking about doing what no one else can. The Jedi tried to fight with honor, with their force powers and ancient traditions. The Republic tried to fight with overwhelming firepower and conventional tactics. Both failed. Bo-Katan's eyes blazed behind her helmet. But Mandalorians, we don't fight fair. We fight to win. The room erupted in approval, fists pounding on the table, warriors shouting their clan war cries. For the first time since the Borg had arrived, someone was offering not retreat or despair, but a plan forged in Mandalorian steel. The clans are with you, Vizsla said. What do you need? Every warrior who can fight, every ship that can fly, every weapon that can kill. Bo-Katan straightened, and her voice carried the weight of Mandalore's ancient legacy. And most importantly, every piece of Beskar we can forge into armor. The Borg adapt to energy weapons, to projectiles, to conventional warfare. But Beskar is one of the hardest materials in the galaxy. Let's see them adapt to Mandalorian iron, driven through their cybernetic hearts. 3 days later, the Mandalorian fleet emerged from hyperspace at the edge of a system the Borg were assimilating. 20 vessels, frigates, corvettes, and the ancient Mandalorian dreadnought, Kirtsad, faced a single Borg cube that had just finished converting the planet's population. It should have been suicide. All fighters, launch, Bo-Katan commanded from the Kirtsad's bridge. Remember the plan. Hit hard. Hit fast. Don't let them adapt. Mandalorian Fang fighters screamed toward the cube, sleek, angular craft piloted by warriors who'd been flying since they could walk. The cube's sensors detected them, analyzed them, prepared countermeasures based on previous starfighter encounters. Then the Mandalorians opened fire with weapons the Borg had never seen. Beskar-tipped missiles, crude by modern standards, but devastating in their simplicity. They punched through the cube's shields not through energy superiority, but through sheer kinetic force and the unique properties of Mandalorian iron. Explosions blossomed across the cube's surface, entire sections depressurized. Drones were sucked into space, tumbling and sparking. The collective immediately began adapting, recalibrating shields for kinetic impacts. But before it could complete the adjustments, the Mandalorians switched tactics. Electromagnetic pulse bombs, ion charges, plasma flamethrowers mounted on fighter wings. Each weapon used once, then discarded for the next attack run. The Borg's adaptation protocols were overwhelmed, unable to counter threats that changed with each passing second. Boarding craft move in, Bo-Katan ordered. 4 Mandalorian assault ships, heavily armored, bristling with close-range weapons, latched onto the cube's damaged sections. Cutting torches, far more primitive than the Borg's own technology, burned through the hull. Mandalorian commandos poured into the breach, their Beskar armor gleaming, their weapons ready. The Borg drones responded immediately, swarming the intruders. Assimilation tubules shot out toward the first Mandalorian they encountered. The tubules struck Beskar armor and broke against it, unable to penetrate the legendary metal. The warrior responded by driving a Beskar vibroblade through the drone's optical implant, then detonating a thermal charge that vaporized 3 more. "Keep moving," Bo-Katan shouted, leading her team deeper into the cube. "We find those central nodes, or we die trying." The Mandalorians fought like demons. When blasters became ineffective after 3 shots, they switched to slug throwers, ancient kinetic weapons firing solid projectiles. When those adapted, they used flamethrowers. When shields protected against fire, they closed to melee range, their Beskar blades and crush gaunts tearing through Borg technology with savage efficiency. The collective had never encountered an enemy like this. Every species it had assimilated fought with their strengths. The Federation with their technology, the Klingons with their aggression, the Romulans with their cunning. But the Mandalorians fought with everything. No honor, no consistency, pure pragmatic violence aimed at a single goal, victory or death. Bo-Katan's team reached a central chamber filled with neural processing nodes, massive pillars of technology pulsing with green light. "Plant the charges," she commanded. Her demolitions expert worked quickly, attaching plasma charges to each node. Around them, Borg drones converged, their numbers overwhelming. The Mandalorians formed a defensive circle, their weapons roaring. "Charges set," the expert shouted. 30 seconds. "Everyone out now." The Mandalorians retreated, fighting every step, leaving 2 of their number behind, warriors who chose to hold the line, to buy seconds with their lives. As the last Mandalorian cleared the chamber, the charges detonated. The explosion rippled through the cube's neural network. Across the entire vessel, drones froze momentarily, their connection to the collective disrupted. Some collapsed, others began moving erratically, their actions no longer coordinated. "Target their engines," Bo-Katan ordered the fleet. "Hit them while they're vulnerable." The Mandalorian ships concentrated their fire on the cube's propulsion systems. Already weakened by the internal explosions, the engines buckled under the assault. The cube began to drift, powerless, its regeneration systems struggling to repair the catastrophic damage. But even crippled, the Borg were dangerous. Repair drones swarmed through the corridors, bypassing damaged nodes, rerouting systems. Within minutes, the collective's connection stabilized. The drones began moving again, pursuing the retreating Mandalorians with renewed purpose. "All teams extract immediately," Bo-Katan commanded. She was the last to leave, covering her warriors' retreat with sustained fire from her twin pistols. As she reached the boarding craft, she looked back at the cube's interior, at the darkness, the drones, the mechanical nightmare that had consumed entire worlds. "This isn't over," she promised. "Not even close." The Mandalorian fleet jumped to hyperspace moments before the cube could retaliate. Behind them, the damaged Borg vessel floated in space, its systems slowly regenerating. The collective analyzed the encounter, cataloging new threats, developing countermeasures. But something unexpected had occurred. For the first time since entering this galaxy, the Borg had been forced to retreat, not destroyed but damaged enough to require extensive repairs. The Mandalorians had proven that resistance, while perhaps ultimately futile, could still exact a terrible price. The recording of the battle spread across the galaxy within hours. On refugee ships, in hidden rebel bases, in scattered Republic outposts, beings watched as Mandalorian warriors drove Beskar blades through Borg drones, as their ships hammered the seemingly invincible cube into submission. Hope, fragile, desperate hope, flickered to life. On Mandalore, Bo-Katan addressed her assembled clans. Her armor was scorched, her helmet cracked, but her voice was strong. "We hurt them today. We proved they can bleed. The Republic thought overwhelming force would work. The Jedi thought the Force would protect them. Both were wrong, but we Mandalorians know the truth. There's no such thing as invincible. Everything can be killed. Everything can be beaten." She raised her fist, and the chamber erupted in war cries. "The Borg seek perfection. Let us show them the perfection of Mandalorian iron, the perfection of warrior spirit, the perfection of a people who would rather die standing than live kneeling." Across the sector, other groups took notice. Pirate crews, smuggler cartels, underworld syndicates, even scattered separatist holdouts. If Mandalorians could fight the Borg and survive, perhaps others could too. But in the unknown regions, aboard the primary Borg command cube, the Queen stood motionless, analyzing the Mandalore encounter. Her consciousness touched the newly acquired data, Beskar armor composition, Mandalorian tactical patterns, their cultural emphasis on adaptation and survival. "Interesting," she murmured to the hive mind. "This species values individual prowess while maintaining collective purpose. They adapt as we do, but through chaos rather than order. They are worthy of assimilation." New directives flowed through the collective. Mandalore would be targeted, not for its resources or strategic location, but for its people. The Mandalorian warrior culture, Their skills, their adaptability, their indomitable will would be added to the Borg's perfection. And once the Mandalorians were assimilated, their knowledge of Beskar forging would be integrated into Borg technology. Imagine Borg drones armored in Mandalorian iron, immune to lightsabers, resistant to nearly all weapons. Imagine a collective that fought with Mandalorian tactical genius and Borg coordination. The Queen's lips curved into something that might have been a smile. Set course for Mandalore. We will add their distinctiveness to our own. We will make their strength our strength. And when we have assimilated the warriors who dared resist us, we will use their own tactics against the galaxy that birthed them. Resistance is futile. But first, resistance must be respected. 10,000 drones responded, "We are Borg." And in the darkness between stars, 7 Borg cubes altered course, converging on Mandalore. The warriors who had dared to fight would be given what they sought, a battle worthy of legend. Whether they survived to tell of it remained to be seen. The Battle of Mandalore lasted 18 hours. 7 Borg cubes descended upon the warrior world like geometric angels of death. Bo-Katan's forces, augmented now by Republic remnants, scattered Jedi survivors, and even a contingent of reformed Death Watch, met them with everything they had. The skies above Mandalore burned with the fury of a people who refused to be conquered. But the Borg had learned. Their shields now compensated for Beskar-tipped projectiles. Their drones carried energy dampeners specifically designed to counter Mandalorian weapons. And most terrifying of all, they had brought their force-wielding drones in overwhelming numbers. Across the cube fleet, 300 assimilated force sensitives stood in their alcoves. Jedi, Sith, even force-sensitive civilians captured from a dozen worlds. Each one maintained just enough individuality to touch the Force, but their wills were completely subsumed by the collective. They moved as one vast organism, their combined power channeled through the hive mind with mechanical precision. Master Shakti, leading the Jedi contingent on Mandalore's surface, felt them coming before her sensors detected anything. A wave of wrongness in the Force, 300 minds acting as one. Light and dark merged into something profane and terrible. "Brace yourselves," she warned the Mandalorians around her. "They're not just bringing drones, they're bringing Force users." "Force users?" Bo-Katan checked her weapons. "How many?" "All of them." The Borg assault craft descended like metallic rain. From their holds emerged not just standard drones, but beings who ignited lightsabers. Blue, green, purple, and crimson blades humming in perfect synchronization. They moved with inhuman coordination, each strike calculated by the collective's vast intelligence, each force push amplified by hundreds of minds working in concert. A Mandalorian warrior fired his slug thrower at an assimilated Jedi. The drone raised its hand, not to deflect, but to stop the projectile mid-air with telekinesis. The bullet hung, suspended for a moment, then reversed direction, killing the warrior who'd fired it. "Osik," Bo-Katan breathed. "They can use the Force now. Actually use it." Shakti ignited her lightsaber, her Togruta mantrals, sensing the disturbance around her. Not just use it. They're coordinating it. 300 Force users acting as a single weapon. This is what the Borg do. They take what makes us strong and perfect it through unity. The assimilated Force users attacked in waves. Their lightsaber techniques were flawless. Not creative, not adaptive, but executed with robotic precision. Every strike was optimal. Every defense was calculated. They fought like a machine programmed with 25,000 years of Jedi and Sith knowledge. But they fought without passion, without intuition, without the chaos that made the Force alive. Shakti met the first wave alone, her blade a blur of Makashi precision. She parried 3 simultaneous strikes, feeling the Force guide her movements. The assimilated Jedi attacked again, their coordination perfect, but perfection was predictable. And prediction meant vulnerability. She struck between heartbeats, her blade finding the gap in one drone's defenses. It fell. The Collective immediately adjusted, the remaining drones compensating for the lost unit. But Shakti was already moving, her connection to the Force allowing her to fight not with perfection, but with improvisation, the one thing the Borg could never truly master. Around her, Mandalorians adapted their tactics. They used the environment, collapsing buildings, explosive traps, anything to create chaos that disrupted the Borg's calculated approach. When Force-wielding drones levitated warriors into the air, flamethrower specialists ignited the atmosphere beneath them, forcing the drones to choose between maintaining concentration and defending themselves. It was brutal. It was desperate. And slowly, impossibly, it was working. But in orbit, aboard the primary Borg cube, the Queen observed the battle with growing interest. The Mandalorians and surviving Jedi were proving more resilient than calculated. Their unpredictability, their willingness to sacrifice, their refusal to follow logical tactical doctrine. These were variables the Collective found difficult to process. Analysis, the Queen commanded. Why do they persist? Victory probability, 0.03%. Surrender would preserve their distinctiveness for assimilation, yet they continued to resist. Through the cube's sensors, she watched a Mandalorian warrior charge 3 Borg drones while carrying a thermal detonator, sacrificing himself to destroy them. She watched Shakti throw herself between an assimilation tubule and a wounded Padawan, taking the infection herself rather than let another fall. Curious, the Queen murmured, they value individuals over collective survival. They choose death over unity. This contradicts perfection. For the first time since achieving consciousness, the Borg Queen experienced something that might have been doubt. Then, through the hive mind, she felt a disturbance. One of the assimilated Force users, a former Jedi master named Ven Zalo, had touched something deep within the Force. Even with his mind enslaved by the Collective, even with his individuality suppressed, some fragment of his consciousness had reached out, and the Force had answered. Across the battlefield, every Force-sensitive being, Jedi, Borg assimilated, even latent sensitives who'd never trained, felt it simultaneously. A presence. Ancient. Vast. Awakening. The Force itself was responding to the threat. On the Kirzad, Bo-Katan received an encrypted transmission. The hologram that appeared was ghostly, fragmented, but the voice was unmistakable. Master Yoda. Bo-Katan cries, "Hear me you must. A discovery we have made. A way to fight the Borg there is, but dangerous it is. Terrible. A weapon from the ancient past, forbidden for good reason. Master Yoda, we're losing. If you have something, anything, we need it now." The ancient Jedi's expression was haunted. The Jedi Order, before even the Jedi were, discovered a technique, a way to sever beings from the Force entirely. Used on dark side abominations it was, but never on such a scale, never on hundreds, thousands of beings at once. Bo-Katan understood immediately. You want to cut the assimilated Force users off from the Force, turn them back into regular drones. More than that. The Borg hive mind, connected by technology it is, but now connected through the Force as well, it may be. If sever weaken that connection, Yoda's ears drooped. Kill them we might. All of them. Every assimilated Force user, every drone connected through that link. Millions of beings, snuffed out in an instant. They're already dead, Master Yoda. Their bodies are just puppets now. Perhaps, but certain we cannot be. A choice this is. Murder on a galactic scale, or allow the Borg to consume all life. No good answer there is. Bo-Katan looked at her tactical display. Mandalore's defenses were crumbling. Her warriors were dying. In another 2 hours, the planet would fall. In another week, the sector would be assimilated. In another month, perhaps the entire galaxy. Do it, she said. Whatever it takes to stop them, do it. Yoda's hologram flickered. May the Force forgive us. May history judge us kindly, but act we must. He closed his eyes. gathering every surviving Jedi Master we are. Together, attempt this technique we shall. If successful, feel it, you will. Everyone will. The hologram vanished. On a hidden moon in the Outer Rim, in a makeshift sanctuary protected by ancient force wards, 12 Jedi Masters sat in a circle. Yoda, Mace Windu, Plo Koon, Luminara Unduli, and 8 others, the last remnants of the Council. Around them, 50 Jedi Knights formed an outer circle, adding their strength to the working. This technique, Mace said quietly. If we succeed, we may not survive it. The backlash through the Force. Survive or die, irrelevant it is, Yoda replied. Stop the Borg. We must. At any cost. They joined hands, closed their eyes, and reached out through the Force with combined will. The technique had no name in Basic. In the ancient Jedi language, it translated roughly as the severing. It was meant to cut a single being from the Force, to make them deaf and blind to the cosmic energy that connected all life. Using it on a galactic scale, on thousands of beings simultaneously, was madness. But these were mad times. The Jedi Masters drew on the Force, not from the light or the dark, but from the Force itself in its purest form. They felt every assimilated Force user across the Borg fleet, felt the corrupted connection between the hive mind and the cosmic energy, felt the wrongness of it, like a cancer on reality itself, and they began to cut. On Mandalore, the assimilated Jedi suddenly froze mid-strike. Their lightsabers flickered. Through the Force, they screamed, not with voices, but with the anguish of beings whose very connection to existence was being severed. The Borg Queen felt it too. Felt the connection to her Force-wielding drones weakening, failing. No, analysis required. The Force is being manipulated against us. Countermeasures. But there were no countermeasures. The Force was not technology to be adapted to. It was life itself. And when the Jedi severing reached its crescendo, when 12 Masters and 50 Knights poured everything they were into that single devastating technique, reality screamed. The assimilated Force users collapsed as one. Hundreds of bodies across the Borg fleet simply ceased functioning. Their midi-chlorians died. Their connection to the Force was not just suppressed, but utterly destroyed, leaving them as empty husks that not even Borg technology could sustain. But the backlash was catastrophic. On the hidden moon, 3 Jedi Masters died instantly, their hearts simply stopping, their minds burned out by the feedback. 5 more collapsed, comatose. Yoda gasped, blood trickling from his nose. Mace Windu's hands shook uncontrollably. Did it work? Luminara whispered. Through the Force, now quieter, somehow less oppressive, they felt the answer. The Borg Collective's Force connection was severed. The hive mind still functioned through technology, but the bridge between the Borg and the cosmic energy was destroyed. Work, it did, Yoda said softly. But the cost? He looked at the fallen Masters, at the Knights who would never wake. Too high, perhaps. Too high. On Mandalore, Bo-Katan watched as the remaining Borg drones suddenly became less coordinated. They still fought, still adapted, but without the Force enhancing them, they were merely mechanical again, merely unstoppable instead of absolutely invincible. All forces, press the attack, she commanded. Whatever the Jedi did, it's working. Drive them back. The Mandalorians surged forward with renewed fury, their Beskar blades carving through drones that could no longer predict their movements through the Force. Shakti, exhausted but alive, led the Jedi counterattack. Slowly, meter by meter, they pushed the Borg back. After 18 hours of hell, the Borg began to retreat. The 7 cubes withdrew from Mandalore's orbit, their forces returning to the vessels. They had not been defeated, merely delayed. But it was the first true reversal the Borg had suffered in this galaxy. As the cubes vanished into hyperspace, Bo-Katan allowed herself a moment of exhausted triumph. They had survived. Against impossible odds, Mandalore still stood, but across the galaxy, in refugee camps and hidden bases, survivors mourned. 300 Force users were dead, not just their bodies, but their very souls erased. The Jedi had committed an act that would haunt them for generations. And in the depths of space, the Borg Queen analyzed the defeat. The Force had proven to be both weapon and vulnerability. The Collective would need to reconsider its approach. Adaptation required, she announced. The Force cannot be fully controlled. Alternative strategy: eliminate Force-sensitive beings entirely. Assimilate the galaxy, but destroy those who can manipulate this energy. They are the variable that cannot be perfected. A new directive spread through the hive mind. The Borg would no longer seek to assimilate Force users. They would exterminate them. The war had entered a new phase, and it was about to become far more terrible. In the aftermath of Mandalore's survival, the scattered remnants of galactic civilization faced a horrifying realization. The Borg were no longer trying to assimilate Force users. They were hunting them to extinction. Across 20 systems, Jedi temples, both active and ancient ruins, were systematically destroyed. Not occupied, not converted, destroyed. Borg cubes would emerge from hyperspace, obliterate any structure associated with Force sensitivity, then move on. No warnings, no attempts at assimilation, just cold mechanical extermination. In a hidden sanctuary on Ossus, Master Yoda convened what remained of the Jedi leadership. Fewer than 300 Jedi survived across the entire galaxy, out of 10,000 who had existed mere months ago. Change their strategy, the Borg have, Yoda said, his voice weary beyond measure. No longer seek to use us, they do. Seek to eliminate us, they now do. Understand they have that the Force, their greatest vulnerability it is. Then we hide, suggested a young Twi'lek knight. Scatter across the outer rim, suppress our Force signatures, survive until what? Mace Windu's voice was sharp. Until the Borg have assimilated every other world, until we're the last beings left alive in a galaxy of drones. That's not survival. That's just delaying the inevitable. Shakti stepped forward, her expression troubled. Masters, I've been researching the ancient texts. Before the Republic, before even the Rakatan Empire, there existed Force orders we've only heard of in legends. The Ones, the Celestials, beings of such power they could reshape reality itself. Myths and legends, Ki Adi Mundi protested. We need practical solutions, not ancient fairy tales. Are they myths? Shakti activated a holocron, one salvaged from the ruins of the Coruscant temple. The ancient device projected an image of a crystalline structure floating in space. This is Mortis, a vergence in the Force, a place where the cosmic energy itself was concentrated. The texts say it existed outside normal space-time, home to beings called the Father, the Son, and the Daughter, embodiments of balance, darkness, and light. Mortis is a legend, Mace said, and even if it existed, Anakin Skywalker's reports indicated it may have been destroyed, or at least rendered inaccessible, during the Clone Wars. But what if it's not the only one? Shakti's montrals trembled with excitement. What if there are other vergences, other places where the Force is so concentrated that even the Borg cannot enter? Or where Force wielders of sufficient power still exist, powerful enough to help us? Yoda's ears lifted slightly. The world between worlds speak of Yudu, the realm beyond time, where all of the Force connects. I speak of anywhere or anything that might give us an advantage. Masters, we cannot win conventionally. The Borg adapt to every weapon, every tactic, but perhaps the solution isn't in fighting them with weapons at all. Perhaps we need to fight them with the Force itself, in its most raw, primal form. The council chamber fell silent. What Shakti was suggesting bordered on heresy. The Jedi had spent millennia learning to channel the Force gently, to serve it rather than command it, to unleash it as a weapon on a galactic scale. There is a place, a voice said from the shadows. A figure stepped forward, ancient, hunched, his face hidden beneath a tattered robe. A place where the Force still flows as it did at the dawn of creation, where the first Force sensitives learned to touch the cosmic energy, where power exists beyond anything you young Jedi have imagined. Mace's hand went to his lightsaber. "Who are you? How did you get past our defenses?" The figure pulled back his hood, revealing a face that was more artifact than flesh. Skin like parchment stretched over bone, eyes that burned with millennia of accumulated knowledge. "I am Sar Agorn, last of the Jedi Temple Guardians. I have walked this galaxy for 3,000 years, sustained by the Force itself, waiting for the day when the ancient knowledge would be needed again." His voice was dry as dust, heavy with time. "That day has come?" Yoda rose slowly, studying the ancient being. Through the Force, he sensed truth and something else. Power. Vast, controlled power that made even the Council Masters seem like candles before a star. "The wellspring of the Force," Sar Agorn continued. "At the galaxy's core, hidden within the deep core's most inaccessible region, there exists a place where the Force originates. Not created there, but where it flows most purely into this reality from beyond. The ancient Jedi knew of it, built a temple there, and sealed it away when they realized how dangerous that power could be in the wrong hands. And you want us to open it," Mace said flatly, "to use whatever's there as a weapon." "I want you to save the galaxy," Sar Agorn replied. "The Borg are technology given hunger. The only way to stop them is to fight not with machines, not with tactics, but with the Force itself in its most fundamental form. At the wellspring, a single Force user could channel enough power to reshape reality, to sever the Borg Collective from existence itself, or destroy the galaxy in the process," Shaak Ti said, quietly. "That kind of power is precisely what the ancient Jedi feared." "Yes," Sar Agorn nodded, "but the alternative is extinction, not just of Force users, but of all life. The Borg will assimilate everything until the galaxy is nothing but geometric perfection. Sterile, unified, dead. Is that preferable to risk?" The Council Masters exchanged glances. The choice before them was impossible. Use forbidden power that could destroy everything they sought to protect, or allow the Borg to consume the galaxy unopposed. "Show us," Yoda finally said. "Show us this wellspring, but promise I cannot, that use it we will." Sar Agorn smiled, a terrible expression on his ancient face. "You will use it. When you see what comes, when you feel the Borg closing in, when every other option has failed, you will use it. They always do." 2 days later, a small strike team departed for the deep core. Yoda, Mace Windu, Shaak Ti, Obi-Wan Kenobi, and Sar Agorn aboard a modified stealth ship. Their destination, coordinates that appeared on no Republic chart, protected by gravitational anomalies and stellar phenomena that made navigation nearly impossible. Behind them, the galaxy burned. The Borg had begun Phase 2 of their assimilation, systematic conversion of every inhabited world, starting from the core and working outward. Refugee fleets fled toward the unknown regions, hoping to buy time. Mandalore's forces conducted desperate raids, but they were outnumbered 1,000,000 to 1. In orbit above Coruscant, now fully assimilated, its trillions converted into drones, the Borg Queen stood in her central chamber. The planet below was a masterpiece of geometric perfection. Every building had been restructured. Every being had been unified. Every resource had been optimized. And yet she felt dissatisfied. "Why?" she asked the hive mind. "We have achieved our purpose. We have added their distinctiveness to our own. We are closer to perfection than ever before. Why does this feel incomplete?" No answer came. The collective didn't question, didn't doubt, didn't feel. But the Queen, the closest thing the Borg had to an individual, was beginning to understand something troubling. Perfection, as the Borg defined it, was static, unchanging. But life, true life, was chaos. Evolution, conflict, and growth and the endless dance between order and entropy. By eliminating that chaos, were the Borg achieving perfection or destroying the very thing that made existence meaningful? No, she told herself firmly. Doubt is irrelevant. Perfection is inevitable. We are Borg. But for the first time, the words felt hollow. In the deep core, the Jedi's ship emerged from hyperspace into a region of space that shouldn't exist. Massive crystals, each one the size of a planet, floated in orbital patterns around a central star that burned with force energy instead of fusion. The very fabric of space here was saturated with the cosmic power. The wellspring, Sar Agorn, whispered reverently. Here, the force flows from elsewhere, from the realm beyond existence into ours. Every force-sensitive being in the galaxy draws on power that originates here, diluted by distance and the vastness of space. I feel it, Obi-Wan said, his voice awed. It's like standing before an infinite ocean, so much power that touching it feels like it would burn me to ash. At the center of the crystal formation stood a temple, ancient beyond measure, its architecture predating any known civilization. Runes covered its surface, glowing with force energy. And at its heart, they could all sense it. A nexus, a focal point where the force itself could be commanded. If we use this, Mace said slowly, if we channel this much power against the Borg, what happens to us? The force will flow through you, Saragorn replied. All of it. Every iota of cosmic energy within 1,000 light years, focused through your bodies, directed by your will. You will become living conduits for the power that sustains all existence. And then you will burn. Your bodies will be consumed by the energy. Your minds will dissolve into the force itself. You will cease to exist as individuals and become one with the cosmic energy. It is the price of such power. Yoda closed his eyes. A sacrifice then. Our lives to save the galaxy. Not just your lives, Master Yoda. Your souls. You will not become one with the Force as Jedi do. Maintaining consciousness, becoming Force ghosts. You will be annihilated, utterly, forever. The silence that followed was profound. Shakti finally spoke. How do we know it will work? That sacrificing ourselves will actually stop the Borg? You don't, Saragorn admitted. This has never been attempted. But in theory, if you channel enough force energy, enough pure life essence, directly at the Borg Collective, you could sever their hive-mind connection, not just technologically, but fundamentally. You could erase them from existence as surely as they've erased individuality from their drones. Or we could fail, Obi-Wan said, and die for nothing. Yes, that is also possible. The Jedi Masters stood before the ancient temple, each contemplating mortality, sacrifice, and the weight of galaxies resting on their shoulders. Behind them, across the stars, billions died every day. Entire civilizations vanished. The Borg advanced, relentless and unstoppable. And ahead within the temple lay power enough to perhaps, save what remained. But at what cost? Time to decide we do not have, Yoda said finally. But decide we must. Return to the others. We shall. Tell them what we found. And then, he looked at each master in turn. Then vote we shall, to use this power, or to let the galaxy fall. As they returned to their ship, none of them noticed the small Borg probe that had followed them through hyperspace. None of them sensed the drone observing from a distant crystal, its sensors recording. Everything. The Borg knew about the wellspring now, and the Queen, watching through the probe's feed, understood the threat immediately. If the Jedi used that power, even the Collective might not survive. A new directive pulsed through the hive mind. Priority target. Deep core coordinates. Assemble all cubes. Converge on the wellspring. Prevent the Jedi from accessing that power. If necessary, destroy the wellspring itself. The final battle was coming, not for a planet, or a system, or even a sector, for the very soul of the Force itself. The vote was unanimous. 13 Jedi Masters, the last remnants of an order that had stood for 25,000 years, chose extinction over surrender. "Understand, I do, the weight of this choice," Yoda said, addressing the assembled Jedi one final time. "Our lives we give, our very souls we sacrifice. But save the galaxy we might. Preserve individuality, preserve life, preserve the future. Worth any price, that is." Mace Windu stood beside him, his weathered face set with grim determination. "We've contacted every resistance cell, every refugee fleet, every world that still stands free. When we activate the wellspring, they'll feel it through the Force. They'll know what we've done, and they'll know they must survive, to remember us, to rebuild, to ensure this sacrifice wasn't in vain." On Mandalore, Bo-Katan received the transmission with mixed emotions. The Jedi were going to die to save everyone else. It was the most Mandalorian thing she'd ever seen them do. "All forces," she commanded, "prepare for final offensive. When the Jedi strike, we strike. Every ship, every warrior, every weapon we have left. We make the Borg bleed for every meter of space. We make sure those Force wizards didn't die alone." Across the galaxy, the call went out. The Resistance would make its stand. But in orbit, above what had been Coruscant, the Borg Queen had already dispatched her response. Every cube in the fleet, 47 vessels, representing millions of drones, set course for the deep core. What the Collective had one priority now: stop the Jedi before they could activate the Wellspring. The race was on. The Jedi strike team returned to the Wellspring Temple with a full complement of Force users. Not just Masters, but every Jedi Knight, every Padawan who could be spared. 200 Force sensitives would channel the power. The rest would defend the temple against the Borg assault that was certainly coming. Saragorn stood at the temple's heart, before an altar carved from a single massive kyber crystal. Around it, ancient mechanisms hummed with dormant power. Force amplifiers built by the Jedi millennia ago, designed to channel cosmic energy on scales that defied comprehension. "When you activate this," the ancient guardian explained, "you'll need to maintain absolute focus. The Force will try to overwhelm you. You must shape it, direct it, aim it at the Borg Collective's hive mind signature. If your concentration breaks for even a moment, the energy will dissipate, or worse, backlash and destroy everything within 100 light years." "How long must we maintain it?" Shakti asked. "Until the Borg are erased. Minutes, hours, perhaps days." Saragorn's ancient eyes held deep sorrow. "Long enough for the power to consume you entirely. You will feel yourselves dying, cell by cell, thought by thought. And you must hold on anyway." Yoda placed a weathered hand on the altar. Through the Force, he felt the immensity waiting to be unleashed. It was beautiful, terrible, the raw essence of existence itself. "Ready we are," he said softly. "For the Force, for the galaxy, for life itself." Outside the temple, Republic forces, the last unified fleet, took defensive positions among the crystal formations, Mandalorian frigates, smuggler vessels, even some separatist ships, their ideological conflicts forgotten in the face of extinction. Admiral Akbar commanded from the flagship Home 1, his tactical mind working overtime to compensate for being outnumbered 10 to 1. "All ships hold the line," he commanded. "The Jedi need time. We buy it with our lives if necessary." The Borg arrived like a plague of geometric locusts. 47 cubes emerged from hyperspace simultaneously, their collective mass blotting out the stars. They moved in perfect synchronization, their cutting beams already powering up, their tractor beams reaching for the crystal formations. The Republic fleet opened fire. Thousands of turbo laser bolts, proton torpedoes, and ion blasts lit up space. The Borg shields absorbed it all, adapting within seconds. But the defenders had learned. They rotated weapon frequencies constantly, used ancient projectile weapons salvaged from museums, even deployed fighters armed with nothing but thermal detonators and suicide runs. It wasn't about winning. It was about buying time. On Mandalore's command ship, Bo-Katan led a wing of Fang fighters directly at the nearest cube. Remember the plan. Hit their sensor arrays, blind them. Beskar-tipped missiles streaked through space, punching through shields that hadn't yet adapted. 3 Borg sensor clusters exploded. The cube's coordination faltered for precious seconds before backup systems engaged. Admiral Akbar used those seconds to position the home one for a ramming run. Evacuate all non-essential personnel to escape pods. Helm, set collision course with cube-designated Hostile 1. Sir, that will destroy us. I know. Do it anyway. The massive Mon Calamari cruiser accelerated, its engines screaming. At the last moment, Akbar ordered full weapons release, every torpedo, every missile, every ounce of ordnance exploding simultaneously as the ship impacted the cube's surface. The explosion was magnificent. A quarter of the Borg vessel's hull simply ceased to exist. Drones by the thousands were vaporized. Systems failed across multiple decks, but the cube began regenerating immediately, and 46 more continued their advance. Inside the Wellspring Temple, the Jedi formed concentric circles around the altar. Yoda stood at the center, his small form somehow radiating immense presence. Mace Windu, Shak Ti, Plo Koon, and the other masters formed the inner circle. Knights and Padawans filled the outer rings. "Begin," Yoda commanded. They reached out simultaneously, touching the Force. But this wasn't the gentle connection they'd trained for. This was plunging into an infinite ocean, allowing themselves to be swept away by cosmic currents. The Wellspring responded, its ancient mechanisms activating, channeling impossible amounts of Force energy through their bodies. Yoda gasped as power flooded through him, more than he'd ever imagined, more than he could contain. His body began to glow with blue-white light. Around him, the other Jedi were experiencing the same. They were becoming conduits, living channels for the Force itself. And it hurt. By the stars, it hurt. Every cell in Yoda's body screamed. His midi-chlorians were burning out, consumed by the energy they carried. He could feel his physical form beginning to dissolve, to become pure Force energy. And he knew, they all knew, there was no coming back from this. But he held on, focused his will, and directed that terrible power outward, toward the Borg Collective's hive mind signature that resonated across the galaxy like a cancer on the Force. "We are the Jedi," he thought, his consciousness beginning to merge with the others. "We are the guardians of peace and justice. We are the servants of the Force, and we will not let you destroy what we have sworn to protect." The beam erupted from the temple. It was not light, not energy, not matter. It was the Force itself, given visible form, a lance of pure cosmic power that crossed the galaxy in an instant, striking the Borg Collective's network at its most fundamental level. Aboard every cube, every drone suddenly froze. The hive mind, that vast distributed consciousness spanning millions of beings, screamed as it felt the Force tearing through its very essence. The Borg Queen collapsed in her central chamber, her synthetic eyes wide with something that might have been terror. What is this? Analysis impossible. This power is... She understood in her final moments what perfection truly meant. Not uniformity, not unity through assimilation, but the chaotic, beautiful, terrible balance of life and death, order and entropy, individual will and collective purpose. The Force was perfection. And the Borg, for all their adaptation, had never understood that. "We are..." The Queen's voice fragmented. We could have been." Then she was gone. Across the galaxy, Borg drones simply stopped. Their cybernetic implants sparked and died. Their bodies collapsed, freed from the Collective's control but too damaged to survive independently. In orbit above Coruscant, the assimilated planet systems began to fail as the controlling intelligence that maintained them ceased to exist. The 47 cubes floating in the deep core went dark. No more green light, no more mechanical purpose, just geometric tombs filled with the bodies of beings who lost everything to the promise of perfection. On the battlefield, Resistance fighters watched in awe as the Borg simply stopped. A Mandalorian warrior lowered his weapon, staring at the drone that had been about to assimilate him. It stood frozen, then toppled backward, smoke rising from its cybernetic implants. What happened? Bo-Katan whispered. Through the Force, even non-sensitives could feel it, came the answer. A wave of peace, of sacrifice, of 200 souls burning themselves out of existence to save trillions. The Jedi were gone. Inside the Wellspring Temple, the circles of Force users had become statues of crystallized energy. Yoda's small form was at the center, his face peaceful, his body slowly dissolving into motes of blue light. Around him, the other masters were experiencing the same transformation, not becoming one with the Force as Jedi normally did, but becoming the Force itself, their consciousness dispersed into the cosmic energy that connected all things. Mace Windu's last thought was of the younglings who would grow up in a galaxy free from the Borg. Shaak Ti's was of balance finally restored. Obi-Wan's was a prayer that this sacrifice would be remembered, that future generations would understand what had been given. And Yoda, ancient, wise, weary beyond measure, thought simply, "Finished it is. Rest now we can." The light intensified until it was blinding. Then it faded, leaving only empty robes and the gentle hum of the wellspring returning to dormancy. The Jedi were extinct, but the galaxy lived. Sar Agorn stood alone in the temple, tears streaming down his ancient face. He had guided them here, had shown them the power, had known what it would cost. The weight of that knowledge would be his burden to carry for whatever centuries remained to him. "May the Force be with you," he whispered to the empty chamber. "Always." Outside, the Republic fleet began recovery operations. Ships limped back to rendezvous points. Medics tended to the wounded. Engineers assessed the damage. And slowly, impossibly, hope began to kindle. Bo-Katan stood on her ship's bridge, staring at the dormant Borg cubes floating like dead stars. "What do we do with them?" Admiral Akbar, broadcasting from an escape pod after his sacrifice run, had an answer. "We destroy them. Every cube, every drone, every piece of Borg technology. We make sure this can never happen again." "And the assimilated worlds?" A long silence, then, "We try to save who we can. Some drones might be restored if we act quickly, but most..." His voice broke. "Most are too far gone. We'll have to show them mercy." It took 3 months to systematically destroy every Borg vessel in the galaxy. Mandalorian warriors led the effort, their Beskar blades and plasma torches cutting through inactive cubes, ensuring nothing could ever reactivate. The work was grim, necessary, and haunting. On Coruscant, rescue teams found survivors, beings who'd been assimilated so recently that the Collective's shutdown had left them alive, if irreparably damaged. Padawan Kira Ven, who'd survived the initial encounter with the Borg, led the psychological recovery efforts. She understood what it meant to watch your reality be consumed. The death toll was staggering. 47 worlds fully assimilated, 300 billion beings dead or permanently damaged. The Jedi Order effectively extinct. The Republic shattered, requiring decades of rebuilding. But life endured. Individuality persisted. The chaos, beauty, and terrible freedom of existence continued. 6 months after the Borg's defeat, a memorial was erected in the ruins of the Jedi Temple on Coruscant. 200 names, carved in stone glowing with gentle Force energy. At its base, a simple inscription. They gave everything so that all might live. They became the Force so that the Force might remain free. May their sacrifice never be forgotten. May their light guide us always. Bo-Katan stood before the memorial, her helmet under her arm. Beside her, survivors from a dozen species, human, Twi'lek, Mon Calamari, Zabrak, even some redeemed former separatists, gathered to remember. They were warriors, Bo-Katan said. The Jedi. For all their talk of peace and diplomacy, when the moment came, they fought like true warriors. They gave their lives for something greater than themselves. That's the highest honor any Mandalorian can imagine. She placed her helmet on the memorial steps. This is the way. Around her, others placed offerings, flowers, weapons, hollow images of loved ones lost to the Borg, each one a remembrance, each one a promise to never forget. In the deep core, the Wellspring Temple stood silent once more. Sara Gorn had sealed it, ensuring that such terrible power could never be used again, or at least not without someone as desperate and determined as the last Jedi had been. He stood before the altar one final time, his ancient body finally beginning to fail. 3,000 years of life, sustained by the Force, were coming to an end. He had fulfilled his purpose. The knowledge had been used when needed. The galaxy had been saved. Perhaps, he whispered to the crystals, perfection was never the goal. Perhaps survival, growth, change, perhaps chaos itself is the true nature of existence. The Borg sought to eliminate that chaos, and in doing so, they eliminated themselves. He closed his eyes and let the Force take him, his consciousness finally joining the cosmic energy he'd served for millennia. On Mandalore, in the Great Hall of Sundari, the clans gathered for the first time in living memory without war on their horizon. They raised glasses of Netragal, the traditional black ale, in remembrance and celebration. To the Jedi, someone shouted, may they find peace in the Force. To the fallen, another called, may they be remembered in song and story. To survival, Bo-Katan declared, her voice ringing through the hall. To the future, to the proof that no matter how perfect, how inevitable, how unstoppable an enemy seems, resistance is never futile. The hall erupted in cheers and war cries. For the first time in months, Mandalorians laughed without fear, shadowing every moment. Across the galaxy, similar scenes played out. Refugees returned to their homes, or to ruins that would become new homes. Children were born who would never know the terror of the Borg. Civilizations began the slow process of healing. The Republic reformed, though fundamentally changed. The emergency powers granted to Chancellor Palpatine were revoked by a Senate that had learned what true tyranny looked like. Ironically, the Borg had prevented the rise of the Empire by showing what absolute unity actually meant. Palpatine, his grand plans disrupted, retreated to the shadows. He would try again, perhaps, but not yet. Not while the galaxy remained united by shared trauma and renewed appreciation for individual freedom. In hidden bases and remote temples, Force-sensitive children were discovered and trained by the few surviving Jedi Knights. A new order would rise, smaller, humbler, more cautious about the power they wielded. They had seen what happened when the Force was used as a weapon of ultimate destruction. The balance would be maintained, not through dogma or rigid adherence to ancient codes, but through wisdom earned in fire and loss. Years later, a young human boy stood before the Jedi Memorial on Coruscant, listening to his grandfather, a former Republic officer who'd fought at the Deep Core, tell the story. Were they heroes? The boy asked, his eyes wide. The old man considered the question carefully. They were beings who made an impossible choice. They sacrificed not just their lives, but their very existence to save others. Hero seems too small a word. They became something greater. They became legend. Will anyone ever be that brave again? The old man smiled sadly. I hope no one ever has to be. That's the gift they gave us, child. The chance to live in a galaxy where such sacrifice isn't necessary, where perfection isn't forced, where unity isn't mandatory, where chaos and order dance together as they were meant to. I don't understand. You will, someday. He placed a hand on the boy's shoulder. For now, just remember their names. Remember what they did, and promise them, that you'll use your freedom well. Live fully, choose kindly, embrace the beautiful chaos of being alive. The boy nodded solemnly, not fully comprehending, but feeling the weight of it anyway. Above them, Coruscant's rebuilt skyline gleamed in the setting sun. Ships moved through traffic lanes. Beings of 1,000 species went about their lives. Somewhere, a street musician played a mournful song on a Kiajin horn. A couple argued about dinner plans. Children laughed in a park. Life, messy, complicated, imperfect, beautiful life. The Borg had sought to assimilate it all, to create perfection through unity. Instead, they had reminded the galaxy why imperfection mattered, why individual choice, even with all its mistakes and conflicts, was worth defending at any cost. In the Force, if one listened carefully, 200 voices whispered their approval, not as individuals anymore, but as part of the eternal cosmic dance, light and dark, order and chaos, life and death, all balanced, all as it should be. The Borg were gone, the Jedi were gone, but the Force remained, and with it, hope. In the end, perfection met balance, and balance endured. The Borg Collective, with all its technological supremacy and adaptive genius, failed to understand the fundamental truth of existence, that life requires chaos, that growth demands conflict, that meaning emerges not from unity forced upon the unwilling, but from billions of individual choices, each one imperfect, each one vital. They came seeking to add the Force to their perfection. Instead, they met beings willing to become the Force itself to stop them. The galaxy that survived bears scars that will take generations to heal. 47 worlds remain monuments to the cost of survival. 200 names glow on a memorial that will stand for 10,000 years. And in quiet moments, when the Force ripples with memory, those who are sensitive can still feel it. The echo of the greatest sacrifice ever made. But from those ashes, something new grows. A republic more humble, a Mandalore more honored. Force-sensitive children trained not in the arrogance of assumed superiority, but in the humility of those who know how close they came to extinction. The Borg taught the galaxy a lesson written in cybernetic horror and planetary extinction, that there are some things technology cannot solve, some powers that adaptation cannot overcome, some forces in the universe that exist beyond the reach of perfection's cold geometry. They learned it too late. The galaxy learned it in time. And if somewhere, in the cold void between galaxies, another Borg vessel drifts, perhaps a scout ship, perhaps a probe, perhaps something that survived the hive mind's death, it will carry within its databanks a single crucial piece of information. There is a galaxy where resistance was not futile, where imperfect beings achieved what perfect ones could not, where the Force itself rose to defend the chaos that gives life meaning, and that galaxy remembers. May the Force be with you. More stories await.